Japan was a country that was really friendly destroyed, but there were people, there were men, women, there were families, there were children, there was life, there were towns, there were cities, there were famous temples, there were loads to see, and of course I took advantage every weekend I could. I'd get off and get on a train because the trains were free. The only way you could get around was the train, or I'd get some soldier who could get hold of a jeep and we'd go on trips around. And I saw as much as I could of the country. I went to Hiroshima, it must have been about a year afterwards, sometime in late 1947. I'm not quite sure, but it was just about a year afterward. I knew an Australian soldier. That was the only way I could get down to see it, because it was off limits to Americans. But if I were invited by a member of the military, my friend, the Australian officer, might be able to get me down as a guest. And so the arrangements were made and negotiations were made, and the commanding officer of the British occupation had a sign for me, and General Eichelberger had a sign for me, and I went to Hiroshima. I got there at night. We were stationed just outside the city. I was staying with the British women who were sort of the American version of the Red Cross girls. And early the next morning, my friend and I got up. We thought we'd walk out by ourselves. That we were going to be picked up at 10 o'clock. They're going to give us a tour. My British friend was going to give us a tour. But we got up early, and we thought, we'll just go out for a walk. We walked out, and there was nothing really to see except the center tower remained, just as the eye of a storm is quiet in the middle of a tornado or of a terrible thing. This terrible Holocaust. The tower had been at the center, and so it was bent and pushed, but it was standing. But elsewhere, even the walls that had been solid rock had been melted, so that you walked along on flat with marks where rooms had been, where doors had been, where windows had been. It was like an architectural drawing laid out before me. It was so horrible. It was so awful. We didn't see anybody at all, and it was horrifying. And then two Japanese men appeared. They walked in back of us as we walked, and they spoke English. One spoke English, and he said, look at what you've done. Enjoy the scenery. You're very proud of this, I'm sure. We ran from the scene sobbing, and we went back to the house, and we begged them, take us away from here. We don't want to be here. Take us away. So they took us out. We didn't actually see any more than that. Well, the customs in Japan were completely different, and geishas were everywhere, because a geisha was not a prostitute. She was an entertainer. In that country, you couldn't make dates with girls. There were no girls around. They stayed at home. They were inferior people. They weren't free to go around or anything. So you'd go to a geisha house, and you'd have a woman who was talented, who was intelligent. You had to be very intelligent to get to be a geisha, because you were to talk politics. No Japanese women knew about it, but the geishas were to know politics or to know baseball or anything that interested men. They were to play music for them, they were to dance, they were to feed them, they were to play silly games like cat's cradle. and entertain them, and then at night they'd go home. No woman could see a geisha house. No American woman could go to it. No Japanese woman could ever go to it. But one day in Kyoto, I saw a British major walking down the street. British because there were two occupations. There was an American occupation army, and there was a British occupation army. The British were in Hiroshima and Nagasaki, which had been bombed. They had decided not to have American troops there. Here was this British major, and he said, "You have to go down the street. There's a wonderful, the geishas are having a graduation ceremony. It's marvelous, simply smashing. You've got to see it, but I have to get back to the office." I walked right into this graduation with my friends. I was with two other girls. We went in and we sat down and we saw the graduation.